Hello, this is PatLad07 doing a review on the Elder Scrolls Beta test from what I've experienced so far. In summary, the PvP appears to be impressive. It seems to be the selling point of Elder Scrolls Beta Online. The PvE, which is almost everything else about the game, the way you go to dungeons, group with friends to do quests, a leveling system, and just in general exploring the world of Tamriel. That's a bit that seems almost completely forgotten about, which is a bit annoying because, you know, you'd have thought from the past 5 games, Arena, Daggerfall, Morrowind, Oblivion and Skyrim, those are the big selling points, so that would be a big selling point for them as well. But they haven't done that, which is why it makes this game a bit of a waste of time for anyone who's a fan of the Elder Scrolls series and wants this game because it's an Elder Scrolls game. The areas of the PvP are good, but don't buy it because it's an Elder Scrolls game, because it's not worth the money. I will explain how I came to that conclusion as I'm going along with this review, using examples from previous Elder Scrolls games, even from wiki pages. Before I push on, I'd also like to say, for the sake of people commenting this is only a beta, I am aware it's only a beta, but the stuff that needs changing is quite big and take quite a while to change, and they now only have a month. I have sent emails and even done a presentation and sent that across to them to try and flag them up when I first did the beta in January. However, the only change they've made was so that way when you're in a crouch and you attack, it doesn't take you out of crouching as soon as you attack. The idea of this was that way if I had a bow and I was in a dungeon on my own, I could stay crouched and shoot them from a distance, a bit more like as it is in Skyrim. When you're in Skyrim, you go in crouch, you aim it, you stay hidden for at least a good while, at least till the health gets down. But I mean, that still doesn't work properly in this. A, because you can't aim your arrow properly, there's not enough freedom to do so. Another fault is that you can't trade with party members, which is absolutely stupid. You have to leave the party just to trade with them, and that's been faulty since January, possibly before. It begs the question, how much can they change between now and April? Even if I say now these things need sorting and they know of them, I don't think they're going to change them, so I'm going to set it to a similar standard as almost a complete game regardless, because you never know what's going to come out, and that's all I can assess by now. When the game comes out, if I do end up buying it, I will reevaluate it and look at it again, but as of now I'm sticking with it. So now to a review on some of the big issues from an Elder Scrolls fan's point of view. I'm going to look firstly at the most obvious, and that's classes. Classes was taken out for Skyrim, so if you're a Skyrim fan you won't be aware of any of these anyway, but for any of the fans from Oblivion or prior, such as Morrowind, Daggerfall, Arena, these are going to be things that you're going to look at. You were given a choice between 4 classes. You've got the Dragon Knight, Sorcerer, Nightblade and Templar. These are the 4 logical choices for an MMO, but not for an Elder Scrolls game. In fact, the Elder Scrolls have 3 main classes: the Warrior, the Thief and the Mage. Every other class then bridges on from that to change the stats slightly. For those Skyrim only fans that haven't played the other ones, this is actually also seen in Skyrim. When you go to your skills window, you'll notice in the sky basically 3 big pictures, one of the Warrior, one of the Mage and one of the Thief. So I don't know exactly why they've picked the ones that they have. It's probably because it's an MMO. But with just a quick Google search, you can actually find all the classes from all the previous games by just searching Elder Scrolls classes and just clicking on the first link. And it actually comes with all of them, even those that aren't part of the main franchise. As can be seen on the web page, the Nightblade and the Sorcerer are actually 2 very active classes within the whole Elder Scrolls franchise. In fact, they're actually 2 of the most active, but I still don't understand why they decided to pick the Dragon Knight or Templar. As can also be seen on the website, they haven't been previously used on any of the other ones, they just seem to have been made up, which is pretty bizarre considering the fact that they didn't have to make any of them up. There are plenty of different classes on there that they could have thrown in. Each one could have made a lot more diversity in terms of what you can have as a party, what you can do as a party, and maybe even who you need in a party for certain quests. But there's clearly no thought gone into that. They're just like, these are 4 that work, we'll use those 4. But the 3 main ones should have definitely been as part of the first 3 that you need, and maybe expanded on that. I do feel that the classes and the issues with those are actually part of a much bigger problem, however. They don't have the main 3 classes, but equally there's a lot of skills that have missed out. And you can see this again if you just do a quick Google search and just search for Elder Scrolls skills, and again it's the first link and it gives you all the skills that relate to the main 5 games plus the online. Looking at this webpage, it has only shown that 4 are registered. To a point that's a little unfair, there are a couple more. For example, they do have destruction and they do have restoration, so those aren't actually registered on there. Other than that though, the horrors of how little skills they actually have from the previous games are very true, which is a bit annoying for some of them because, you know, they should definitely be in the game. Some of the key ones are lockpicking. You know, you can lockpick, but you don't get anything. There's no reward apart from you open the chest. But it feels as though you put in a lot of effort and you're getting no gain from it. Sneaking doesn't have anything. In fact, if you take all the skills related to your stealth in Skyrim, just remove all them, because none of those are in. There are no stealth ones, which explains why there is no thief class. Other skills that they've completely ignored include some major ones such as alteration, conjuration and illusion. 3 that I don't know many people that use them, but to be honest, if you're trying to make diverse classes, those would be quite useful, particularly if you created a system where you could create your own class and you wanted to pick which of the 5 different mage areas you wanted. That'd be quite interesting. Heard problems regarding the multiplayer and how that works, and how you don't feel as though you need a party because you can master everything yourself. This is definitely one of those Elder Scrolls versus MMO moments. In the Elder Scrolls you can master everything in its single player, it doesn't matter if you master everything. In fact, that's one of the best bits about it. But in an MMO you can't really master everything, because if you master everything, the whole idea of the multiplayer goes out the window really. The easiest way around this is to include more skills. To help explain how additional skills might actually benefit the multiplayer aspects of the Elder Scrolls Online, I'll first explain by going how it currently works with Elder Scrolls Online. Currently, what you have is you have the 3 main skills as part of your class. Within those skills you've got improvements. You've got active improvements, passive improvements, and there's 5 each, and then you have 1 ultimate improvement. After that you've then got your different other skill areas, so you've got like dual wielding, 2-handed and, you know, sword and shield, and they also have active abilities and passive abilities. Then below that you've got world, you've got guild, you've got race, you've got crafting, and those are all passive abilities from then. And all those do help in their own little areas. So by adding more skills, what you could therefore do is you could say, okay, everyone can then enchant, for example, and everyone would be given the, I don't know, 5 or 6 passive abilities that everyone gets. But let's then say that you choose a sorcerer, and with that sorcerer what you could then do is you could give one of the sorcerer abilities, one of the class abilities, as additional enchanting options. This would then mean that if you wanted a really powerfully enchanted item or an enchantment, you would then seek out a sorcerer, because they would have the ability to do that. And equally, they would have like different destruction or restoration spells that you might not have. So it'd be useful then to have them on your team. So the skills are a bit off at the minute. The next area has got to be spells, and one of the things that I really enjoyed in Skyrim is you could dual wield to have a spell in one hand and a sword in the other. Brilliant. And you couldn't do that in Oblivion, Morrowind, Daggerfall or Arena, but you could do spells, you just have to do them separately. And again, that's something that I've not done. You can do spells because there are sorcerer there, but you have to have a staff for it. So if you want to do a destruction spell, you have to have a destruction staff. If you want to restore health, unless you have an ability linked to a class to do that, or to your race, again, that's another thing that irritates me, because you have to have restoration stuff for that, which I don't like. I think it should be a case of you buy spells and you use them like it always has been, but it seemed to have changed that as well. The inventory is also annoying, and I noticed that almost immediately playing it for the first time, and I don't understand why they've done it the way they have. The way they've done it is like a traditional MMO. You have 50 items and you can carry 50 items. But that's not how it does in the Elder Scrolls series. In fact, I'm yet to have come across a game that does not give you a maximum weight limit. Yeah, okay, it's still a bit ridiculous in Skyrim how you can carry such large amounts and just run around everywhere, but let's be honest, no game's perfect. What makes it even worse as part of the Elder Scrolls Online is that they have so many different crafting options, but you can't really do anything for them, because the way you could do it if they had it like Elder Scrolls is when you carry big items, you can get rid of those big items first and then deal with all the small bits. But since everything equals 1 and you can only carry 50 items, you have to get rid of half of your inventory just to do anything with the other half, which slows down a lot of progress, and I hate that. It really irritates me. I mean, you can't even carry that much anyway with what they've got. I mean, 50 items is used up so quickly, particularly when you start having to carry more and more with you, like potions and stuff. It seems a bit stupid, and I am aware that you can buy backpacks for 400 gold for it, but it doesn't feel quite the same. It takes you completely out of the Elder Scrolls element when you realise that actually nothing has a weight, and half the crafting options, you can't utilise them. The final big issue with the Elder Scrolls Online Beta are the way that the Elder Scrolls are used. Now, I'll first explain how they're used, and the way that they are used is your faction can go attack certain buildings, and in those buildings there'll be an Elder Scroll, and you take that Elder Scroll for your faction, and that helps provide certain enhancements or abilities for your faction, which helps in the war. Now, I understand the concept of the Elder Scrolls, but I dislike the use that they've used Elder Scrolls for this idea. Fans of the Elder Scroll universe understand what the Elder Scrolls are and how they're used, and they have a very simple use. They have scriptures of the past, the present and the future, and in the Elder Scrolls games you are the protagonist and your actions change what the Elder Scrolls say, and that is the only way that they actually relate to the Elder Scrolls saga themselves. And the only way to actually read an Elder Scrolls would be a way that would actually blind the reader. So it doesn't quite work. You can potentially use it for benefits, but there wouldn't be much benefit for a war. To start with, you'd have to get the right Elder Scroll, and even then, if your opponents decide to go down a different route from what you've read, in the end of it, it may not work out anyway, because you may change the plans, and therefore what you've read in the Elder Scrolls is no longer true. So it's a bit of a stupid thing to use, and it's further ignorance of their view on the Elder Scrolls universe and the previous games. I didn't have to research anything to work out that that's what the Elder Scrolls were used for. So ultimately, the Elder Scrolls, they don't seem to, I feel as though they're misused, and I'm not saying get rid of that. If they want to keep that in, that you can get things and use them for yourself, it sounds like a good idea, but change it to runes or something that's not related to the Elder Scrolls. It does say, there isn't much about it. It does say that there might be more power behind them in certain places, but I don't know. As I say, I didn't understand how you could get that information, and that it would definitely be the right information every single time, because they are scattered, they're random, and they come in and out of existence as and when, so I don't know. They don't quite hit the mark for me. I think they've missed the point there. There are a couple of other areas that I'm not too happy with. One is the leveling. Leveling traditionally for Elder Scrolls, as of Daggerfall onwards, it's been increase your skills, increase your level. And the way to increase your skills is through use. With the ESO Beta, you got levels on certain quests that you completed. Now I get having your skills increase as part of a guild, such as Fighters Guild or Mages Guild, but they do it just with any quest, and as I say, it's random. You get experience for quest rewards, and I agree with that. You get loot and you get gold. And I agree with those as well, but I think those should be a reward, unless, as I say, it's part of a guild, then maybe a skill increase is okay, with an appropriate area, and it should be a general area as well. The next area is not something many people probably would have much of an issue with, because it's another ESO versus MMO. Perhaps it's the most appropriate, but it's infinite arrows. For me, I don't particularly like it. I'd rather make my own, buy my own. And as I say, if you had the archer class, you could have certain passive abilities that allowed them to retrieve more arrows, find more arrows, and find more gold, help pay the dividend, and just give it a high stockpile. That'd be quite easy. And again, it's allows a bit more diversity there. Perhaps another nitpicking moment here, but to be honest, they have little NPC communication windows that I dislike. It changes the whole angle that you're standing at, zooms in and all that kind of stuff, and just takes you out of the game really. I don't like that. I think if they just had it as it is in Fallout or Oblivion or Morrowind, I feel as though asking for the chat windows to be similar to how they are in Skyrim is an unrealistic expectation for an MMO, and therefore I wouldn't be expecting that. But certainly out of the three that I mentioned, that they would help keep you immersed in the world around you. Another way to make it Elder Scrolls friendly is races. I mean, you've got the races in there, they look fantastic, but they do aim towards certain things. I think the most pertinent example is I decided to be a Nightblade and I was a Wood Elf, and my race, what they tried to do is try to push for the Wood Elves to use a bow. And in an MMO that's acceptable, but I don't think that's acceptable in Elder Scrolls. They do have specialties, but the specialties should be completely unlinked to any of the other bits they have. You know, I mean, for an Argonian, it's all about restoration. Well, what happened to the, disease immunity stuff? You know what I mean? Don't give them immunity straight away, and instead allow the skills to grant that, and eventually, once you've leveled up and are high enough and you've got enough of that perks, boom, you're completely immune to diseases. That would be useful, that would be interesting, something different. And they've just not done that. They're still stuck to the MMO aspect of it. And if they really utilised the Elder Scrolls diverse races, particularly looking at the previous game, Skyrim, they could have done a lot more interesting stuff. I mean, one of the things for an Argonian is water breathing, but they don't have anything like that. Of course, you can't swim underwater anyway on the Elder Scrolls Online, so, I suppose it wouldn't be useful, but it would be interesting to see. Which also brings me more to my next point. You can't swim underwater, which is a bit weird, and I think that's another thing that's been ignored of, and I don't like that either. I don't understand why you can't swim underwater. I think they should look into that. Underneath it all, however, there are some positives. The graphics are really nice, I do like those. The art style is very Elder Scrolls, and that'll get you into it. The music is very Elder Scrolls, the UI is almost exactly like Skyrim, which is fantastic. The voice acting really helps you get immersed. Your skills morph, and that has some very interesting and unique changes that help make your character a bit more different, a bit more diverse, and I really like that. Your character creation is one of the best I've ever seen on an MMO. Granted, I don't play them much though, so I don't know how much that's worth. The AI and intelligence seems pretty good. I mean, there was one time I killed a spider and started attacking another one, and the spider went to go eat the dead spider's corpse to revive its health, which I thought was interesting. And if you're an archer, you will always get someone chasing your ass down with a giant blade, which is good AI intelligence overall. There are some other examples, and we've got like an individual quest tracking, which is quite interesting. Definitely very good when you're playing on your own and you're doing the tutorial bits. So rather than seeing the same person following everyone, you see the one person following you, which is quite cool actually. I do like that. And the quests and story in general can be quite interesting. It varies on where you are, but from my experience, the quests I actually did quite enjoy. The final points now are just in general potential improvements that I feel as though would help the game. As there's a lot of resources, you can get runes, you can get plants, you can get wood, you can get stone, all that kind of crap, to be honest. It fills up your inventory really quickly, but equally it kind of gets really messy very quickly as well. It'd be useful to have resource bags similar to like you do on Dungeons and Dragons Online. You have little pouches and stuff, and you put gems and stuff in that. That'd be fantastic. Get those and cooking Elder Scrolls Online. Say sell and buy amounts, so like you can actually state what the quantity of certain items that you want. When I'm wanting to buy soul gems, since they're so useful in the game, I would like to buy a lot. I can't buy a lot without clicking a million times. So it'd be quite useful, and sometimes I want to sell an item but I only want to sell so many, and they don't seem to have an easy working way of doing that. To actually combat the idea of this, you don't need multiplayer, and I thought about it myself and I thought, well, what could you do realistically? What could you actually do to help with that? And one of the things that I thought you could do is actually have a party progress share and quests where you need a party. This could be used in conjunction with each other to help influence this. So for example, there were one quest where you had to put out a fire and there were 6 fires and it would bitch on your own. Because every time you saw a fire, some asshole went and put it out, and 9 times out of 10 you said, oh, you put this fire out, and you had nothing to do with it, and the person that put it out wasn't even on your fire. Which kind of ruins the individual quest tracking that I said was fantastic. So yeah, that gets annoying, particularly when the rest of your party's done that quest and you don't. So the idea of a party progress share is the party leader could toggle it on and off, and it lets the progress of the quests be shared. So if you have to help 6 people get out of a fire, when one person's done it, everyone's then completed it, rather than each person doing it individually, and it helps bring a bit more togetherness with the party as opposed to just a group of people playing together. Because, as I say, it's not a very good Elder Scrolls game at the minute anyway, so just by increasing the amount of multiplayer suitability, you're actually improving the quality of the game itself as well. But equally, I think certain quests should actually be party specific. So for example, with the 6 people in the fire, you can make it so as an individual you can only save 1 to 2 of those people, and you will still get a reward for those that you save, but you will get a much greater reward if you save all 6, or if you save 4. This will then influence people to say, okay, I want then a party of at least 3 people, and get people into a party to do this quest, and then everyone gets a reward. If you do that and you have enough of them, a lot of people are going to push towards that anyway, just so that way they get more rewards. And I'd do something like that, because then even if you don't have the diverse amount that I've been saying would help, at the very least with the amount of people that are playing, it helps create a bit more of a union between those online. And you could use this in conjunction with progress share, so if you had progress share on quest, the progress of this quest would be shared, and that'd be the way that you'd have to do it. Get 3 people and turn progress share on, so that way as soon as they've saved someone, that adds to your amount, as well as when you save something, it adds to theirs, meaning that you can save 6, as opposed to if you have progress share off and you went and did your own thing, each of you would only save 1 to 2 people, and that's all that would count. So I think that's the best way of going about it, and equal progress shared helps, so that way you can go walk the dog, could get the character to sit down and turn progress share on, do a quest, and he's still getting some of the bits from it. He wouldn't get everything. It's not like he would get all the experience, which I think that's one of the unique things that Elder Scrolls Online has above others. If you had something like progress share on WoW, you could get a level 1 doing level 90 quest and bump up levels really quickly. But with Elder Scrolls Online, that's not much of an issue. You still get the rewards, but the way to level is through use, so you know what I mean, it kind of helps that. I mean, you do get experience, but ultimately it's only part of how you level up, so it helps prevent it itself. But you could add a couple more options, such as whether you do or don't share experience and stuff like that, almost like progress share, and then have different things on there to state what you do and don't share, so if it's gold or whatever it is, and then at the end of it you can divide it up between whoever's been in the party. A bit like a cross between how Fable 2 used to work, along with how Puzzle Pirates works, when you go and have bounty, you give it pieces of it depending on who's helped and what they've done and how long they've spent. That'd be interesting, and I think that'd be the best way of going about it. How that easy that'd be to pull off is beyond me, to be honest. And I think that's it. I think ultimately, in conclusion to this, I'd say Elder Scrolls Online is not worth it if you're buying it on the grounds of it's an Elder Scrolls game and you enjoy the Elder Scrolls franchise, because they're definitely developing it more for the MMO factor, and PvP is its selling point. I don't know how long that'll last, and at the moment I'm not thinking of buying it. If you pre-ordered it because it's an Elder Scrolls Online, then I would be tempted to get your money back basically, and other than that, we'll see what happens on release day, or I'll update if there are any major changes in the next beta, if there's another beta, and hope that things do change, because 50 quid and but not £10 a month, it's not a game that I would be paying that amount for, put it that way. And that's it, bye!